Hey everyone. So in addition to Doug Ford coming to power, and at the very least the best case scenario that happened as a result of that and as a consequence of that, and the reason why I was kind of excited and on board with supporting Doug Ford wasn't that I think politics or politicians are the moral leaders by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, I recognize that, hey, they're politicians at the end of the day. And there might be some outliers. There are lesser of evils for sure. And there are even some that are somewhat principled to a certain degree, or at least much better than their counterparts in some other political organizations or parties. But I've always understood that, yeah, nobody has any pretense of authority over me. Not Doug Ford, not Justin Trudeau, not Rachel Notley. None of these political hacks, like I say, they're not my authority. I'm not a conformist. I'm not a slave. I'm not a subject. I'm not a serf. So I don't look for my moral guidance from people who automatically, just by the sheer fact that they run in a political party, to become an authority that can steal and plunder people. Like I say, their job description already shows me that they're immoral by the natural extension of the fact that they're politicians. Like I say, it'd be different if we lived in the world where politicians did everything that were based on voluntary interactions, but politicians represent government. And government is a big, gigantic gun in the room. Now, some of them will use that gun a lot less than others, but they all still want to take and assume control of that gun and point it at their political opponents or demand or force people to abide by their political edicts. Doug Ford is no exception, other than the fact that he's, at least for those of us, we're sick and tired of the Liberals pointing the gun at the population of those in Ontario to the point in forcing them to give up even more and more of their productive income or fruits of their labor. I recognize at least Doug Ford was somewhat better, or actually a whole lot better in that regard. Or at least I thought. He's already shown me that, yeah, he's not nearly as principled as much as I hoped he was. Didn't take very long for the luster or the shine to come off from that particular political initiative. But once again, folks, I'm under no illusion. And like I say, I just realized that, well, at the very least, Kathleen Wynne and the Ontario Liberals were relegated almost to the dustbins of history. Yeah, sure, they'll be able to dust themselves off eventually and try to make another round, another go at it. But at the very least, they were sent a very clear message by the people of Ontario. Anyways, forget all that. This is in reference to Toronto Sun article, and this is actually one of the things that I think, of course, you shouldn't require government to force this kind of stuff. It just should be a natural extension of our freedoms, just like it is in the U.S. Freedom of speech is enshrined in the Constitution. It's an understanding and acknowledgement of those who rule over us that the people have the right to say whatever the hell they want to say, whether you like it or not. And the only exceptions, the only caveats are, if you're using your speech to solicit genuine violence, imminent threats to another human being, where there's actually clear and concise proof that your words are going to actually lead to actual violence, actual physical acts. That is basically the only restrictions that the Americans have ever had to worry about in regards to their ability to speak freely. In Canada, not so much, unfortunately. But this is at least one step that helps us take us further towards that reality. Headline, Free Speech Policy Mandatory on Campuses in New Year. This is being reported by Antonella Artuso, December 29th, 2018. The province's colleges and universities will be required to have a free speech policy in place in the new year. Stephanie Ray, spokesman for Training, Colleges and Universities Minister Marilee Fullerton, said the Higher Education Quality Council of Ontario, HEQCO, will assess each institution's policy in January to advise the minister whether it meets the minimum standard. The minister expects all colleges and universities will be in compliance as of January 1st, she said. The objective of the Ontario Campus Free Speech Policy is to ensure that each publicly assisted college and university has a strong and clear free speech policy that is consistent across institutions, Ray said in an email. The policy will not only protect free speech, but ensure that hate speech, discrimination, and other illegal forms of speech are not allowed on campus. So we're hearing already, they're still leaving that open to interpretation, because what does hate speech entail? What does that even mean? In the U.S., there's no such thing as hate speech. So we're seeing that even Doug Ford and his PC conservatives, they're still not giving you what you truly require as far as having free speech. But hey, at least it's a step forward, or a step in the right direction, right? Conservative students have long complained that their voices are being censored on campuses. And in 2017, Wilfrid Laurier University graduate student Lindsay Shepard was told she was creating an unsafe environment for her students when she aired an episode of TVO's The Agenda that featured University of Toronto Professor Jordan Peterson discussing his position on to the Canadian Human Rights Act. Premier Doug Ford promised during the spring provincial election campaign that he would require every publicly funded post-secondary institution adopt a free speech policy or face funding cuts. The policy must include several elements, including an acceptable definition of freedom of speech, a statement that colleges and universities should be places of open discussion, that students should not be shielded from ideas or opinions that they disagree with or find offensive, that members of the institution are free to criticize and contest views expressed on campuses, and that hate speech is disallowed. We are ensuring that Ontario's publicly assisted colleges and universities defend free speech for everybody, remembering that free speech is not an invitation to be reckless or hurtful, and it all comes down to respect, Ray said. The Ministry of Training, Colleges and University is actively working with publicly assisted universities and colleges as they draft their own policies. Universities and colleges are able to consult with their communities on the specifics of their policy, so long as it is consistent with a minimum standard. So anyways, I'll post a link to this article in the description of the video below, but at least, like I say, at least it's a good first step. Canada, we're still a long ways from having genuine free speech in this country. That's another area where I admire and have a tremendous amount of respect for our counterparts to the south of us in the U.S. I love the fact that they have genuinely enshrined rights as it pertains to freedom of speech. I hope that maybe Canada will get to that same point someday. In the interim, well, at least the Ontario people, or those who comprise those who are filling up our colleges or university campuses, well, at the very least, we can see that they will have some capacity or some ability to say what's on their mind and push back against the far left political orthodoxy, which seems to be hell-bent and determined on silencing or quelling the speech of anyone that opposes their collectivist ideology. For that, this is something that should be applauded and praised. It's a Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.